Hi there, this is Roy from Sulphur City Sabres. Purpose of this video is to offer a very brief overview of how to correctly fit your blade into your sabre. Now, depending on what model sabre you have, you may have between 1 and 4 blade retention screws. In most cases with sabres, you only actually need one retention screw to hold in the blade. So one would be a bare minimum, and if your sabre model has any additional blade retention screws, the use of those is completely optional. You can either remove the screw and have it as a shine through, or if you do want to use it, just tighten the screw down as normal. Now let's have a look. A blade retention screw is a screw that tends to sit up near the emitter of your sabre, where the blade is inserted. In the case of this model, which comes from a company called Saberforge in the States, we have 2 blade retention screws. These are 2 sabres from Sulphur City Sabres, our Fugue model, which has 4 retention screws, 1, 2, 3, 4. And this is our Paragon model, which has several retention screws. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 again. And like I said, in most cases you can actually just get away with one. In our regular dueling groups here locally, we run these as loner sabres, and we just use one single screw in one of these top holes here. So let's have a look at how we tighten up the blade. I'm actually just going to use this as an example here. So imagine this is the blade. You have likely got a heavy grade dueling blade. It's a simple case of inserting the blade into the sabre until it sits up against the LED module, which will sit about here, and you'll kind of feel a little bit of a clunk. If you've got a near pixel sabre, you'll insert your blade and there might be a couple of millimeters where you feel it's a little bit springy. That's perfectly normal. That's just depressing the sprung pins in the near pixel module about here on the sabre. But anyway, how do we get our blade in correctly? So pop your blade in until it's nicely seated. You take the Allen key that would have come with your sabre, pop it into the blade retention hole or blade retention screw, and like I said, the screws will be in some of these holes here, and again varying depending on your sabre design. And you want to screw in your blade retention screw until you feel it make a light contact with the surface of the blade. Once it makes contact with the surface of the blade, okay, for a heavy grade blade, which would have likely come with your sabre, it only takes about 1/3 to 1/2 of a turn to lock your blade in place. Don't feel tempted to drive that retention screw further and further into the bottom of the polycarbonate blade. Not only will it ding up the bottom of your blade, but you also run the risk of stripping the threads on one of your blade retention holes. Like I said, all it needs from that initial first contact on the polycarbonate blade is about 1/3 to 1/2 of a turn. Now you can check that your blade is in firmly by doing what's called a twist test. Grab the blade, grab the hilt, and not ultra forcefully, but with a little bit of force, just see if you can twist the blade in the sabre. If you feel the blade give a little bit and twist in the sabre, it just needs another additional tweak in the blade retention screw of 10 to 15 degrees just to lock it in a little bit further. If you tighten it up again, try the twist test, you'll probably find that your blade is nicely secure. During use, if you've got a RGB baselit model, of course, keep double checking that your blade retention screw is tight every so often. You don't want your blade coming loose and ejecting from the saber, but in most cases, once your blade is in there tight, it tends to stay the duration of your saber session. So that is how you lock in your blade. In this case, I've simply used a blade plug. It's a decorative little gizmo you can put into sabers whilst your blade isn't inserted, but the principle is exactly the same. Like I said, so when we ship our sabers, we pre-install blade retention screws in all of our holes. If you just want to use the one blade retention screw, as we do here, you can just remove all but one screw. If you want to use all of your screws, then simply repeat the process of making sure your screw's out of the way while you put the blade in. Screw the blade retention screw in until you feel it make light contact with the surface of the blade, and then do that third to half of a turn to lock it in. And do that with all of the retention screws on your saber if you so wish. Anything from 1 up to the maximum amount on your saber. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask, and happy sabering.